Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. So on today's video, I will be reviewing the Proxima PX1695, or as you guys would probably recognize it as the Seiko Superior Homage. Now, if you guys recall, a couple of weeks ago, I unboxed two Proxima watches. I unboxed, I think, a PX1691, which is like a 38mm dress slash sporty watch that they released, and it was along with this watch. Now, in the unboxing, I covered specifications and dimensions, so therefore you will find specifications and dimensions on screen for you guys for reference purposes. Now this joins Proxima's range of 38mm watches. I think as of late, the last few months, they've released quite a few 36 or 38mm watches. They've started to kind of catch on to this trend of smaller watches, and they've brought out a Seiko Superior Homage. Now it's quite an odd watch to Homage, I'll admit that, because we haven't seen any, and the only one that we have seen is of course from San Martin, and this bears a very similar resemblance to the one from San Martin. In fact, it may be exactly the same minus the branding and maybe a few things here and there. And it does go back to this being quite an odd watch to Homage, but it's a great watch to Homage. As you guys know, but it is a great watch to Homage. Arguably, I think some of Seiko's best years were in the 70s, 80s, 90s, up until the early 2000s, where they still kept in line with their DNA. They still brought us fantastic watches, very unique designs, as nowadays it just seems to be reissue after reissue after reissue after reissue, and with soaring high prices. But I'm glad Proxima did something different, and this watch, it does have some very unique features. It does have great build quality, so let's look at this in a lot more detail. Of course, the main focal point for this watch, the main selling point, is this awesome dial, and there's a very unique pattern on there. It does seem like a quilted pattern or textured pattern, but it is a very intricate pattern. I mean, just look at the level of detail here. I think some of the techniques they'll have to do to create these dials, or whatever factory they use, it just shows some real advancement in that side of the world when it comes to just manufacturing in general. As you guys know, they manufacture a lot of the world's products, but not only that, they have coupled it up with these amazingly well made hour markers, the handset. I'm just surprised how well they've homaged the Seiko Superior. Now, the hour markers themselves, they've got loads of detail. You can see they are stepped hour markers. You don't usually see this on watches. Perfectly applied. Now, even the minute track is also applied with these thin pieces of metal, and I've not seen that on a watch at this price point or even higher. Usually you see a printed minute track, but to see a applied minute track, that is something unique, highly polished as well, so you can see how the light bounces off all these reflective surfaces. The stepped hour markers, just a lot of detail in there. Now, of course, they've gone with a Proxima branding, with the unicorn. Now, I believe at this point, I think the unicorn is fully assimilated with the Proxima brand. There's no longer any separation, which I'm slightly disappointed, because I believe Proxima was a good brand. It's very difficult to get a decent brand out of AliExpress, a decent name. I've always said that Proxima, name, it's okay. It's one of the better ones, but now they have assimilated that unicorn logo, made it look a bit mean. They try to give it a masculine twist, I suppose, but have a look at that logo there. That does look like a vicious little unicorn there. And now above the 6, you've got just plain simple automatic. I'm really impressed with the quality of the dial. And you've got a very nicely brushed case, and just have a look at these facets here on the case. You can just see a clean line between the two levels of brushing present. So again, a stepped case when it comes towards the lugs. So quite a unique finishing there as well. And you've got this polishing on the side of the watch case, which does kind of step over onto the A face, but it is cleanly finished. So some nice hairline brushing there, and in the light, it just really plays well with the light. You got the AR coated sapphire there, which the AR coating, thankfully they haven't done it as they used to back in the day. If you guys remember, the AR coating that Proxima used to use in the dive watches was overpowering, and in fact a lot of brands from AliExpress did that, just loads of blue. But this one isn't the same. You've got great clarity on that crystal, and at certain angles you'll see that blue hue, so that's quite nice to look at as well. So let's check out this loom, because there is some loom on there. Do I expect a loom monster? Probably not, because they are quite thin, but let's see how well they've applied it. And I am pleasantly surprised with that loom. It is of course BGW9, you've got it applied on the hour markers and the hands. And as I said, it is applied quite thin. You know, the hour markers don't have that much space for the loom. Very thin slithers. And the hands have got very thin slithers applied on there. So not a lot of room for the loom to be applied. And with the hour markers, again, you know, very small batons. But they've applied it well. There's a lot of layers there. As you can see, it is quite bright. It's not a dive watch, so you don't expect immense loom. But I think for the type of watch it is and the hour markers and the hands, I think the loom is more than adequate, so they haven't skimped out on there. So, you know, all in all, that is a great looking dial. So I think looking at everything, I think this is quite a incredibly built watch. I think you get quite a lot for your money. The case finish is exceptional. That dial quality, that build on that dial, you know, all the application of the minute track, the hour markers, the hands used. You've also got a capped seconds hand. Yeah, you're getting quite a lot for your money. So the only thing is to compare, you know, whether or not if this is cheaper than the San Martin, and then of course that branding preference. So I think a lot of people would be leaning towards San Martin in that area, but if the price of the San Martin is far too much, then this is definitely a great alternative. So let's turn the watch around, and you've got a very plain case back, screw down of course with some linear brushing, and they have kind of upgraded that leather strap just slightly. I think there was a few negative comments by myself on the previous strap. It was quite cheap. It was an afterthought. I mean, this isn't that amazing, but at least it looks a bit more modern. It feels a bit softer. You've got a contrast stitching present, you know, leather on the back, etc. But there's an absence of quick release bars, and I think, you know, since the introduction of quick release bars, you know, if the watch doesn't have drilled lugs, then you definitely need quick release. You know, you don't want to be fighting with this, which unfortunately I will have to do now because I want to try it on a different strap. So let's see how that goes. So I swapped out the black leather strap and I've gone for just a slightly thicker stitched brown leather strap, dark brown to be quite exact. And yeah, I think, you know, the watch is going to suit a variety of different leather straps. I think it'll suit leather straps quite well as opposed to rubber. But you do have the option of going for stainless steel because you just need flat end links. But just consider, you know, the depth of it. I think the bracelet needs to be fairly thin. So like a vintage bracelet. I think a lot of the older bracelets were quite, you know, with flat ends, so you shouldn't struggle with finding a bracelet that does fit the watch. So let's put this on wrist. Let's see how this 38mm Seiko Superior Homage fits. So on wrist immediately you do get some of that nostalgic feeling. My wrist is 6.5 inches. It fits well on the wrist. Those kind of enclosed lugs work wonders as well for the watch. And that is a nice visual. I like how it looks on wrist. I'm not too sure about how it fits on wrist though, because, you know, with these straight cases, these straight lugs, you do have that unsightly gap just sitting on the wrist. You can just see how it sits dead straight. And that's the unfortunate thing with these watches. You know, in order for them to fit better, you need a much smaller size. You need, I'd say, maybe a 34, 35mm watch with extremely short lugs, because this is sitting rather flat. So while it looks good on wrist, it doesn't feel all that great in all honesty. It's not something that I could probably wear regularly because it's just, yeah, where's the curvature, right? How is this supposed to sit on the wrist? Maybe on bigger wrists, yes, because obviously you got a lot more wrist for this watch to sit on. I think that's the issue with wrist sizes sometimes. 6.5-inch wrist, you know, not every size fits that wrist quite well. But in terms of, as I mentioned, the build quality, the dial quality, hands, the blacked out markers, you know, everything is built extremely well. I can't fault the watch. I don't know how you guys feel about the Unicorn. Are you guys warming up to it? I don't know, because I was quite happy with the Proxima font. So it's up to you guys. If you do like this enough, you know, feel free to purchase it. Of course, I'll leave the link within the description, but just make sure you've got the right wrist size. A 6.5-inch wrist, I don't think you'll be happy with how it fits. You need a 7-inch wrist, or if not bigger, for this to really fit well. So that's it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.